My name is Phantom. It has been a while since I've recorded a video like this, holy shit. As of this recording, we have less than 24 hours until Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon finally goes live on PC. We PC enjoyers are eating good. We're gonna get the game like 6 hours before the consoles. It's already pre-downloading in the background as we speak. I've been looking forward to this game for a very long time. And in anticipation for it, on stream, I beat almost every Armored Core game that has ever come out. I say almost for a reason, we will get to that. This video is going to be kind of a recap slash overview slash review of all the games leading up to 6, and me giving recommendations as to which games you guys should play if you want to try and experience the absolute clusterfuck that was the Armored Core series. There's a few diamonds, there's a lot of rough. Keep in mind, I did not grow up with these games. Until I played them all on stream, I had never watched or played a single Armored Core game. So no nostalgia glasses here. Our adventure started back at the end of April when we set out with the goal of playing through the entire series. That is 15 games before Rubicon launched. A very important point to make throughout the Armored Core series is that almost every single generation is a completely different and new universe with different lore, corporations, guilds, planets, characters, monsters, everything. But the main story of pretty much every game is as follows. Earth / the world you are on is locked in a corporate war with large-scale corporate entities constantly battling for political control, land, resources, technology, ideologies, etc. And we play as Ravens. In Gen 4 we're called Lynxes, but don't worry about Ravens are for-hire mercenary pilots that sell their services to the corporate entities for pay or infamy or notoriety, etc. And each game also has its own arena to climb the ladder and try to become the top-ranked AC pilot in the world, becoming #1. This was the gist of every game. Depending on what factions and corporate entities you favor and do missions for, you can change the story, access special missions, and get different endings throughout the games. Now, each series or generation, as the player base refers to it as, has its own storyline, making it possible to play pretty much any generation standalone and not be missing out on anything. There are quite a few things that stay the same throughout the games, with recurring characters, usually changed but still familiar faces, making it feel like a complete anthology and not just random offshoots. Characters like the infamous pilot Hustler 1 and his AC 9-ball, as well as special weapons like the Karasawa, show up very regularly. Even if they are different in each universe, it's not a retcon of the character per se, more like an alternate version in an alternate world. Think like Marvel or DC style multiverse. The first series actually consists of both Gen 1 and Gen 2, with each entry taking place in the same continuity, but telling very different stories between the generations. Now, each generation has its titular Armored Core, insert gen number here, but also has DLC style alternate game discs that you can transfer your save from one over to the next with. Gen 1 consisted of Armored Core Project Phantasma, and Armored Core Master of Arena. Now, I had just finished playing the OG PS1 Kingsfield games on Steam with you guys when I started Armored Core 1, so the controls actually felt pretty okay for me, seeing how it had the exact same control scheme as Kingsfield did. The very limiting controls make skillful play pretty hard to do in the first 3 generations, and Armored Core 1 was very brutal. You start off just fighting somebody, no tutorial, and then you just start having to do missions. The ammo you use and the damage you take is deducted off the money you get from each mission, and if you lose too much health, or use too much ammo, or fail the mission, you actually lose money. And if you go into too much debt, game over. 90s arcade game style, sent back to the beginning of the game with nothing. So if you plan on playing these games, get used to saving. A lot, at least for the first 3 gens. Armored Core 1 was eh. It was an alright experience. The end levels felt kinda ass with a jumping puzzle, but the final fights were actually alright. But where Gen 1 starts getting good is when you look at its follow-up, Armored Core Project Phantasma. If anyone were to ask me, Phantom, you played all the games, I want to try OG Armored Core, what should I try? Phantasma, 100%. The game had the exact same controls and the exact same overall layout as the original game. However, where it excels in is when you start looking at the things it does differently. This game did not have the game over debt system, although you could still lose a lot of money. But it had a very self-contained story, and the levels were genuinely really fun. There were very, very, very few gimmick levels, a straightforward and easy to follow story, fun AC fights, and a really great end boss fight. I loved the characters. Phantasma was an easy 10 out of 10 for me, and it was probably my favorite of the games to play through overall. Then we get the ugly bastard of Gen 1. Armored Core Master of Arena. This game is simple. Very simple. You climb the arena rankings to take out 9-Ball, the rank 1 AC that I mentioned earlier. As you climb the ladder, you interact with various corporations and sponsors and opponents until you finally face off against and defeat 9-Ball. Of the 3 Gen 1 games, I honestly have to say Master of Arena was my least favorite. It was pretty easy to just brute force the entire game, and a few of the fights were just really gimmicky. Like, horribly gimmicky to the point of it not being fun. You just kind of bash your head against the wall until you win. It wasn't even mechanical or skill difficulty. It was just RNG and gimmicks. I actually first tried the last boss, which is considered one of the hardest fights in the entire series, because my mech was just overpowered. I didn't play super smart. I didn't play super amazing. I was just able to brute force it because it was kind of just a stat check. That's the biggest problem I have with most of the early gens. So much was just artificial difficulty stat checks. But despite it being my least favorite of the original 3, it was okay. I wouldn't replay through it. It wasn't good enough to be replayed, and that's what I'm going to say about a lot of these games. I thought this was the worst of the worst when I first played it, but trust me, the series managed to top it. Eventually, they managed to top it. Speaking of topping the first series, the story continues into Gen 2 with Armored Core 2 and Armored Core 2 Another Age. Hard pass. I genuinely did not enjoy these two games very much at all. The story was eh. The gameplay-wise, a lot of the levels were ass. Like, genuinely not fun to do. The very end of Another Age was great. Lots of really fun AC fights, really cool boss fights in general. It was actually really good. However, that accounted for about 5% of the game that was good. The other 95% was just not fun. Long-ass gimmick levels, stat checks, artificial difficulty, it really dulled the experience a lot for me. I'm a FromSoft fan. I like difficulty. Real difficulty. Skill expression. Challenging fights. Not numbers and RNG. So if you wanted to try classic PS1 era Armored Core, Gen 1 and Gen 2, Project Phantasma is the way to go. It was by far one of the best AC experiences out of all the games. Super fun. It wasn't too long. You can do it in one sitting, genuinely. I highly recommend it, but everything else can be skipped, honestly. Then we get into Gen 3 with a new universe, new Earth, new story, new everything. Unlike the other games before it, Armored Core 3 starts us off in an underground city / mega complex / set of biodomes called Laird, where humanity fled to in order to escape a global catastrophe that left the Earth destroyed, and a godlike AI called the Controller is monitoring, protecting, and guiding the corporations of mankind. We as Ravens rebel against the Controller and eventually destroy it, freeing humanity. After completing the Controller's test and freeing mankind from Laird, we jump immediately into Silent Line, the direct sequel to Armored Core 3, where we explore the world as these corporations nest up in their own places, and the classic Armored Core style corporate war continues with a strange area called the Silent Line, where any ships and ACs that enter the area just get completely obliterated by space lasers and strange alien-like technology. In my opinion, these two games are the peak of early Armored Core. Phantasma was great, controlled, and a clean experience, but 3 and Silent Line threw away the gimmicks and replaced them with really fun levels, difficult fights, and an amazing overarching story that I absolutely loved, with genuine plot twists and all in it. The game made for just a fantastic experience. However, Gen 3 continues into another 4 games before we get to Gen 4, with those games being Nexus, the PSP exclusive Formula Front, Ninebreaker, and Last Raven. While Armored Core 3 and Silent Line were really good, Nexus, Formula Front, and Ninebreaker didn't quite live up to their predecessors. Well, technically a continuation of the story still, and okay games in their own right, save for Ninebreaker. They kind of returned to the stat check, artificial difficulty gimmick stuff that made me not really enjoy Gen 2 at all. Last Raven, however, is a bit of an odd egg. While Last Raven is still a Gen 3 game and a continuation from the story after Nexus, it marked the start of FromSoft trying to sculpt the experience of Armored Core. While everything before it held the same control scheme, same general combat and such, Last Raven boasted updated visuals, updated controls, especially around movement, and really difficult fights, especially bosses, with some of the genuinely hardest bosses that have ever been put in an Armored Core game. The problem with Last Raven is that while the controls and visuals and combat design changed, combat itself did not. The controls are much more fluid, but you still get caught on random shit. You still have this clunky PS1 style lock-on system that made it very not enjoyable. It felt like the combat was lagging so far behind the actual movement and other controls. Like, it just kind of got forgotten about. Now, I know I just pissed off a fair chunk of Armored Core's community by saying that, but it's true. The clunky combat took away from the experience quite substantially. And while Last Raven is known for being the most difficult Armored Core game, it's a lot of artificial difficulty, RNG, and stat check gimmicks. So to recap so far, if you want a taste of classic Armored Core, Project Phantasma is your go-to. If you want to experience the best classic Armored Core can offer, AC3 and Silent Line will scratch that itch wonderfully. I highly recommend those two games to anyone who would like a taste of AC's upbringing. It's like peak before they finally started really overhauling stuff, which is a very good way to segue our way into Gen 4, which is, in my opinion, the peak of Armored Core as a whole. Gen 4 comes right out of the gate with massively overhauled controls, quick boosting, a much nicer lock-on system, really fast skill expression based gameplay. I genuinely felt like a badass mech pilot throughout the entirety of Gen 4. They absolutely nailed gameplay and game design. The mech designs and weapons are really fun. The combat, story, arenas, the new hard mode you can unlock after your first playthrough, as well as multiple endings that you can get through continuing to go through playthroughs with a free play mode. 2 arenas. It made for some of the most fun I have ever had in a mech combat style game ever. Zooming around, blasting enemies, and finessing the shit out of really powerful and iconic characters like White Glint, one of AC's poster boys up there with Nineball, is some of the most fun I've ever had in a game, period. The overarching story is really good and really fun to get into, huge boss fights, and revolutionized combat level design. Magnifique. 10 out of 10. I loved it so much that I'm still playing it while I wait for 6. It's that fun. However, this is where our story gets cut a bit short, because after playing 13 of the 15 games of the series, my series had to stop at Armored Core 5. If you have a physical copy and a PS3 laying around, I'm told it's an alright experience, but technology just hasn't quite gotten to where it needs to be to play this on a PC. Just look at the gameplay. It speaks for itself. On top of that, From Software tried to sculpt the series even more in the direction that they wanted to, but sadly technical limitations ended up slightly butchering their vision. The game is known for being a really good attempt that just didn't work the way that they intended it to. In interviews, From Software later say that they had a very clear idea of what they wanted, but technology at the time just didn't allow it. That is, until now. With Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon coming out in less than 24 hours. This game is supposed to be the vision that they had back 10 years ago with the release of 5. It looks like tons of fun. We are going to be no-lifing the shit out of this game on stream with the countdown clock and everything. No way we aren't. Overall, I have loved the series. There were a lot of entries that were massively overshadowed by the better games, but even the worst games were still fun, except Another Age and Ninebreaker. Fuck those games. Those two were genuinely ass, and I wish I hadn't played them. But I did. I did my research. I went from an AC virgin that has never touched or seen the games before to having played every single game that I could. Thanks to a whopping 116 hours of streamed live gameplay over several months, I can safely say that I have gotten to experience Armored Core as a whole and know what to expect, hope for, and look forward to when 6 comes out tomorrow. I had a few reoccurring ACs that I used throughout the series, but my favorite to use to the games was my pride and joy Golden King. a quad or bipedal AC based entirely around heavy damage, energy weapons, very high reward from just making sure you aim right and land the shots. His ultimate 4-answer version is the most fun I have had piloting a mech yet. I'm 100% going to be translating this bad boy into Rubicon. Get ready for a lot of hours of Golden King ripping apart MFers in fucking AC6. His design and name were actually based off of the Icarus armor set and the title given to the player character in Kingsfield 2, which was by far my favorite game playthrough that we have done on this channel. It's safe to say that throughout 5 generations of games over the course of more than a decade, FromSoft has really upped their game. Going from gameplay like this to gameplay like this. I'm really excited for Rubicon. We will be doing a countdown stream tomorrow leading up to the launch, and then absolutely tearing into the game. So if you're interested, please stop by and hang out as we explore a new world and a new generation. Otherwise, I have a ton of playlists of a ton of playthroughs of a ton of Armored Core games that you can check out while you wait if you would like to. I'll leave links to them in the description. But as kind of an overall ruling, if you want to try classic Armored Core for yourself like I did, ask yourself this first. Would you rather A, get a taste of the classics, B, enjoy the best of the classics, or C, rip and tear through the peak of AC? If your answer was A, Project Phantasma. Do it in one sitting. If your answer was B, try out Armored Core 3 and Silent Line in that order. Those really are the most fulfilling and enjoyable of the early generation games. And if you answered C, 4 and 4 are the way to go. They still have a dedicated player base, 10 plus years later. With the games having different continuities, you do not under any circumstance have to play the other games, nor would I even recommend it. The community likes to say that they are very difficult games. While later levels do get harder, even in the good games, the worst ones really aren't difficult. It's a lot of gimmicks, artificial difficulty, and RNG. There's not really a fun way to make the game difficult, but it's really all they had back then with the technology that they had. So the bad games have kind of soured, while the good games have aged like a fine wine. The ones that are good were able to make it difficult without making it unfair, which is something that Phantasma 3, Silent Line 4, and 4 did a really good job with. But this marks the end of an era. Goodbye, classic Armored Core. You were an amazing series to play through, and I have thoroughly enjoyed all over 100 hours of gameplay. And I can safely say that I am incredibly hyped for this new generation. So pick up your Kurosawas, boys. We are ravens. Our mechs are prisons and tombs. Our mission must be completed at all costs. Our freedom will be death, and we will earn it.